What's up everyone, it's Nick and I'm back with another video, and this time, as promised, I'm here to count down the top 10 Prep to Pro NBA players of all time. Cue that intro. Now, after 2006, the NBA implemented an age limit where players need at least 1 year removed from high school to be eligible for the NBA draft. However, it's been discussed recently that they might go back to letting players come from high school straight to the NBA. Not sure how that's going to go, but while obviously the guys I'm about to name did pan out, there have also been guys who did not pan out, like Kwame Brown, Eddie Curry, Sebastian Telfair, or Darius Miles. Sean Livingston. Well, Sean Livingston did get injured, so you can't really blame him, but at least he had a pretty long career, so I'll give him that. But now, before I begin, I do want to mention some honorable mentions, but I'm not going to really go in depth with the honorable mentions. I'm just going to name them. So the honorable mentions are Lou Williams, Tyson Chandler, who Andy Hoops did a video on, I'll link that in the description, Daryl Dawkins, J.R. Smith, Andrew Bynum, and Al Harrington. Now let's get going with the top 10. Coming in at number 10, I have Monta Ellis, and you may think, how is he ahead of Tyson Chandler or Andrew Bynum when he never made an All-Star game? Well, to me, offense holds more weight than defense when evaluating players, unless their offensive output is really similar. Also, Andrew Bynum just didn't care enough, so yeah, Monta Ellis, I'll take him any day. And also, Andrew Bynum made his one All-Star game appearance during a time when the center position was dying outside of Dwight Howard. Not that Andrew Bynum wasn't good that year, but still, I gotta give it to Monta. And Monta, at his very best, was averaging 25 points per game. Sure, on a bad team, but it's still 25 points per game. And he very much could have been an all-star if he wasn't playing on such a bad team at his very peak. And playoff performances is also a big reason why I put him over Lou Williams, not just the fact that he had a higher scoring output at his peak than Lou Williams ever had. Even after his days with the Warriors, Monta was still able to put up 18 to 19 points per game. And speaking of the playoffs, on the 2014-15 Dallas Mavericks, while already the leading scorer with 18 points per game, playing alongside Dirk past his prime and Rondo just not working out very well, he did put up 26 points per game in that first round series against the Rockets. And yes, in a losing effort, but still, it obviously wasn't Monta's fault that the Mavericks lost that series. Now, Monta and Lou Williams both came into the NBA in the same season. Monta did have a better start, but it's not really saying much because Lou Williams was only averaging 1.9 points per game as a rookie. And Lou got better as the years went on, but he wasn't a 20 point per game scorer until he was 31, didn't even score 15 per game until he was 28. While Monta won Most Improved Player in his third season in the league on the We Believe Warriors, the thing that Lou Williams does have on his side is longevity, since Lou Williams is still in his prime right now while Monta's been out of the league for 3 years. But because of where they peaked, I have to go with Monta in this regard. And in terms of their overall skill, the only thing Lou Williams does have over Monta Ellis is his three-point shot. And neither are good defenders, so I'll just look at offense and I'm going to go with Monta Ellis. Now, number 9, I have Rashard Lewis, one of the original Splash Brothers. Also, the second guy on the Dwight Howard-led Orlando Magic that went to the NBA Finals. He was also a late bloomer, as he wasn't a starter until his third season and got better each year from the 2001 season until the 2006-07 season. He had his career high of 22 points per game in the 2006-07 season, but also missed 22 games that year due to injury. While he was a vital part of the Orlando Magic team that made it to the NBA Finals in 2009, Rashard Lewis did start to decline afterwards. He did manage to win a championship on the LeBron-led Miami Heat though, but he did it as a bench player. While he's not making the Hall of Fame, he sure did have a successful NBA career, and I'm sure being the knockdown shooter that he was, he'd love to play in today's NBA. While I do think he'd be better in today's NBA, Let's not act like he'd be a superstar today because he was a knockdown shooter. He'd just be better. Now, between Jermaine O'Neal and Amar'e Stoudemire, I had to think about this one because Jermaine O'Neal is obviously a much better rebounder and a defensive player, but because Amar'e was such a better scorer, and also Amar'e wasn't as disappointing in the playoffs, I had to give it to Amar'e. In fact, Amar'e was actually very impressive in the playoffs during his time with the Phoenix Suns, especially in 2005. And in the conference finals, against the eventual champions San Antonio Spurs, going up against Tim Duncan, he put up 37 points per game. Jermaine O'Neal never could have done that in the playoffs, so there's another reason why I'm putting Amar'e over Jermaine O'Neal. But I'll talk about Jermaine O'Neal first since he has the number 8 spot. And in case anyone's still wondering in 2020, no, Jermaine O'Neal is not related to Shaq. So, Jermaine O'Neal, at the time of his NBA debut, he was the youngest ever NBA player until Andrew Bynum broke his record. And at the time, he was playing for the Portland Trail Blazers and was surrounded by veterans, which didn't give him much of a chance to prove himself. When he got traded to the Indiana Pacers, that's when he broke out, and in the 2001-02 season, he was named to his first All-Star game and won Most Improved Player. This was when the Pacers knew Jermaine O'Neal is the next franchise player, as Reggie Miller was getting up there in age and was on the decline. He became one of the better two-way players in the NBA. The Pacers had the best record in the 2003-04 season at 61-21, but lost in the conference finals to the eventual champion Detroit Pistons. And the Pacers just really struggled against the top defense in the league that year. And Jermaine O'Neal only averaged 17.3 points per game, 3 less than his regular season average, and shot just 40% while Ben Wallace severely out-rebounded him in that series. The following year, you know this happened. Jermaine O'Neal was suspended for 25 games in his role, later reduced to 15. He did put up a career high of 24 points per game. However, he injured his shoulder and missed some time with that too, which resulted in him playing just 44 games. And in the playoffs, he was just absolutely abysmal. He did have a good playoff series in 2006, but it was not at all enough for the Pacers to get past the Nets in the first round. So yes, his playoff failures and also not being nearly as good of an overall scorer, being named to just 3 All-NBA teams as opposed to Amar'e's 6, is why I have Amar'e Stoudemire ahead of Jermaine O'Neal, even though yes, Jermaine O'Neal is a much better defender and rebounder. Amar'e also happened to be more efficient and a better shot creator. Even while playing alongside Steve Nash, Amar'e in his prime still had less points assisted than Jermaine O'Neal in his prime. Except for in 2008, but most of his prime, yeah. When assessing players, offense just holds more weight to me. Yes, defense wins championships, but you'd rather build your team around a scorer than a defense first player, right? So now I'm going to talk about Amar'e Stoudemire, aka STAT. If you didn't know, that stands for Standing Tall and Talented. Beginning his career with the Phoenix Suns as the 9th overall pick, he finished his rookie campaign as the Rookie of the Year while in the same draft class as Yao Ming. He scored 38 points in the December game against the Timberwolves, which was then a prep-to-pro record for rookies, which was eventually broken by LeBron James just one season later. In a redraft, he would have been the second pick, as you can see the guys in between Yao and Amar'e were underwhelming, although Jay Williams is a what-if due to his motorcycle accident. DeJuan Wagner had a medical condition, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the best prep-to-pro NBA players. In his 8 seasons in Phoenix, Amar'e averaged 21.4 points per game on 54% from the field, with 8.9 rebounds and 1.4 blocks per game. His best season came in the 2004-05 season when the Phoenix Suns were revolutionizing basketball with its 7 seconds or less offense, when he put up 26 points per game on 56% from the field. The following season, he missed all but 3 games due to injury. The Suns still won 54 games without Amar'e. After that, he was able to regain his scoring prowess in the following years. Although he never averaged 10 rebounds per game in any season, the closest he ever got was 9.6, and he was never a good defender. However, he was a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses, especially with Steve Nash feeding him the ball, and yes, he was also a good shot creator of his own. He went to New York in 2010 on a max contract to reunite with Mike D'Antoni, brought life back to Knicks basketball. At the deadline, they traded for Carmelo Anthony. The Knicks made the playoffs for the first time since 2004 and had their first winning season since 2001. However, during the 2011 lockout, Amar'e got overweight, and after that he was just never able to be that star player he once was and had to battle injuries. He had the knee surgery in the 2012 offseason, missed the first 30 games, which made him a bench player. Amar'e spent the end of his career in Dallas and Miami. Never again the prolific scorer he once was, but let's not forget how good of a scorer he was when he was in his prime. He came to New York when no one else wanted to and helped a dying franchise come back to life. That franchise is my second favorite team, and sadly, they're a dying franchise again right now, even though they are a big market. Coming in at number 6, Tracy McGrady, T-Mac, one of the most lethal scorers of his prime. Winning the scoring title twice, was a 7-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA First Team, 3-time All-NBA Second Team, and 2-time All-NBA Third Team selection. He was drafted 9th overall by the Toronto Raptors and primarily came off the bench for them in his 3 seasons playing there alongside Vince Carter, who you may or may not know is his second step-cousin. When T-Mac signed with the Magic before the 2000-01 season is when he broke out into a star player and won Most Improved Player, and in 2003 and 04 he won the scoring title before getting traded to the Houston Rockets, where he would continue to be one of the most lethal scorers in the NBA before injuries derailed his career. However, he never made it out of the first round in his prime. He did put up great playoff numbers, but also choked in the biggest moments. Legend of Winning did a great video on that before. I'll link that in the description, so go check that out if you like. We all know about him scoring 13 points in the last 35 seconds of the game against the Spurs when most people thought the game was over. And I do think that he and Yao, if they never got hurt, the Rockets definitely could have beat my Lakers in 2009 since the Rockets took them to 7 games without them. I could also argue though that the Lakers may have played with a bigger chip on their shoulder if Yao and T-Mac were healthy, but the results are what they are, and if T-Mac was not derailed by injuries, he definitely would have been much higher on this list. Number 5, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 8-time All-Star, 5-time rebounding champion, 5 All-NBA First Team, 1 All-NBA Second, 2 All-NBA Third, 5 All-Defensive, and 1 All-Defensive Second Team selections. Led the league in blocks twice, and now he's an NBA champion. And while I don't think the championship significantly boosts his legacy, it's still something nice to have, and to me he's definitely a borderline top 10 center of all time. And while yes, when he was at his peak the center position was dying, but that's not in his control, and while he never had a very polished post game, his strength and athleticism certainly made up for it. He finished second in MVP voting in 2011, and the Magic definitely wouldn't have made the playoffs that year if it weren't for him. And the 2009 team that got to the finals, we kind of got to see a preview of what we'd see in the Milwaukee Bucks now. How they surround Giannis with 4 shooters, that was the Orlando Magic back then, surrounding Dwight Howard with 4 shooters. And people actually think that he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer, and I think that's absolutely bizarre. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer without a question. And even in what's considered to be a disappointing season in 2013 with the Lakers, he did actually lead the league in rebounding and did make the All-NBA Third Team. So to be able to do what he did in his prime, you have to be pretty damn good. So yeah, Dwight Howard, Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. It's not even debatable. And then he did have one more All-Star season in Houston. Then injuries happened while James Harden was carrying the team. And then he and James Harden had some issues because Dwight Howard wanted to continue to be a post player even though he was really better off a pick and roll option. And then that led to him becoming a journeyman, going from Atlanta to Charlotte to Brooklyn, getting waived by the Nets before he even played a game, and then going to the Wizards. And I think he was also traded to the Grizzlies at some point, but then got cut before he even played a game. Whatever. But you get my point. He became a journeyman before he came back to the Lakers. And now he's a champion. Also, Shaq, you can just let him enjoy the moment. It's not like Dwight Howard will ever catch up to you in the all-time ranks, so chill out, okay? Number 4. 2003 to 04 MVP, 2007 to 08 Defensive Player of the Year, and a 2008 champion. Also recently became a movie star, the big ticket, Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett was the first high school draftee since 1975 when Daryl Dawkins and Bill Willoughby, I don't know how to say his name, but whatever. I didn't even know who he was until I started doing my research for this video. But anyways, he was the first high school draftee since 1975. Yet unlike some of these guys, KG actually had an immediate impact on the Timberwolves, and in just his second season he was already an all-star. You can also say KG was the first form of what you would call a modern big man, because he was extremely versatile, and many young NBA fans wouldn't know because they only got to see a much older Kevin Garnett. Not the one who can defend multiple positions, not the one who was able to explode to the basket, while also very good at posting up. He was even able to bring the ball up the floor and run the offense if his team needed him to. He was never much of a three-point shooter, but that's more due to his era. He was a great mid-range shooter, and I think that if he played today, he definitely would step back and knock down threes at a respectable percentage. Now, check this out. He is the only player in NBA history to average 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists for a season more than 5 times. It's really a shame that the Timberwolves wasted his prime so badly and never surrounded him with enough talent to make it out of the first round until 2004, and it took until he got traded to the Celtics for him to win a championship. It's really a shame things didn't work out with him and Stephon Marbury. And yes, Stephon Marbury had too much of an ego, but Terrell Brandon was the best they got in return from him. Yeah, Terrell Brandon was good, but his career was already going downhill at that point. And they gave up on Chauncey Billups before Chauncey Billups was able to blossom into an all-star and finals MVP in Detroit. Let's also not forget the Joe Smith scandal. If you're unaware of that, I'll link the Andy Hoops video in the description for a more in-depth analysis on that. Even though the Timberwolves were a playoff team, so they only had late first-round picks, those late first-round picks could have been missing pieces for Kevin Garnett to, at the very least, make it out of the first round in Minnesota. And also, Joe Smith, while he was not a bad player, he was definitely not worth having this scandal over. And in Boston, Kevin Garnett brought back a winning culture. Him, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen all sacrificed scoring for defense. And believe it or not, Kevin Garnett is actually the only Boston Celtic ever to win Defensive Player of the Year, although the award didn't exist when Bill Russell played, so that also explains it, right? But anyways, number 3, the only player on this list that I never got to watch because I wasn't born yet, Moses Malone. Moses Malone was not an NBA draftee, actually. He was actually drafted in the ABA in the 3rd round. A 3-time MVP, one of the greatest post players and rebounders ever. He averaged 13 rebounds per game for 9 straight seasons, at least 10 for more than 5 after that. He averaged 17.6 rebounds per game in the 1978-79 season. This is why they called him the chairman of the boards. The year he averaged 31.1 points per game, he put up 14.7 rebounds per game. Although he won 3 MVPs, to me, I do think championships hold weight. That's why he's not ahead of Kobe, even with 2 more MVPs, and he also didn't make nearly as many All-NBA or All-Defensive teams. His prime wasn't nearly as long, so yeah, Moses Malone is number 3, even though Moses Malone is also the 2nd player to ever change teams after winning the MVP award, and the other 2 players in NBA history are Wilt Chamberlain and LeBron James. And yeah, Moses Malone, 3-time MVP, but doesn't quite crack the top 2. Coming in at number 2, my favorite player of all time, Kobe Bryant, 4th all-time leading scorer, 5-time NBA champion, 2-time finals MVP, 2007 to 08 MVP, 2-time scoring champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 81 points in a game, second to Wilt's 100 points in a game for a single game, 11 All-NBA first teams, 2 All-NBA second, 2 All-NBA third, and 9 All-Defensive first team, 3 All-Defensive second team selections. Known for his relentless work ethic, a direct quote from Kobe, "I can't relate to lazy people. We don't speak the same language. I don't understand you. I don't want to understand you." While yes, Shaq was the better player on the 3-peat Lakers, to say Shaq carried Kobe is idiotic. Maybe to an extent in 2000, but Kobe was still a star player and a top 10 player in the league by then. But by 2001 and 02, Kobe was a legitimate superstar, and he also wasn't as inefficient as many people make him out to be. The only thing with Kobe's efficiency is that he was just less efficient than other top 10 players of all time outside of Bill Russell. His career averages were 25 points, 5.2 rebounds, 4.7 assists, and 1.4 steals per game, while shooting 44.7% from the field with a 55% career true shooting percentage. But also, if we go by just from 2001 to 13, he averaged 28 points per game, 5.2 assists, 5.7 rebounds, and 1.6 steals per game. And although the Lakers were a first-round exit due to injury and chemistry issues in Kobe's 17th season, that was still one of the best of his career. And I don't think it gets nearly enough recognition, to be honest, just because as a team they fell short of their expectations. For that season, he averaged 27.3 points, 6 assists, 5.6 rebounds, and 1.4 steals while shooting 46.3% from the field, playing 38 minutes per game at the age of 34. After he tore his Achilles towards the end of that season while willing his team to the playoffs, he was never the same player again, but still I'll never forget his 60-point finale Mamba out. I also really appreciated that before he tragically passed away, he was all about the next generation, unlike some players from the past. And I just wish that more former players had Kobe's mindset about the next generation rather than hating on them out of insecurity. So, Kobe Bryant, greatest shooting guard ever. That's name is not Michael Jordan, top 10 player of all time. Now, want to guess who has the top spot? Hint, it shouldn't surprise you. Number 1, the King, LeBron James. The only player not named Michael Jordan who has any business of being called the greatest player of all time. I don't care what former players say because of course they're going to have their biases. And if you think I'm a Kobe hater, especially what I just said about him now, like, just stop. Like, I'm not even gonna bother with you. And LeBron James, 4-6 in the finals. Well, I'd rather be 4-6 in the finals than 4-0. Third all-time leading scorer, 4-time NBA champion and finals MVP, 4-time regular season MVP, 16-time All-Star, 13-time All-NBA first team with 3 more All-NBA teams to go along with that, 5 All-Defensive first team selections, as well as an All-Defensive second team selection, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, led the league in assists this year for the first time. Turning 36 next month and still going strong. He's still the best player in the world, don't at me. Just imagine how many more championships he could have won if the Cleveland Cavaliers were a more competent franchise and if they could have gotten him not only more help player-wise, but also could have gotten him better coaching. You already know how I feel about Tyronn Lue, and while Mike Brown was a great defensive coach, not a good offensive coach. So, yeah, LeBron James, no doubt in my mind, has a number 1 spot for this. And for all-time players in general, he and Michael Jordan are 1A and 1B. So there you have it, the top 10 Prep to Pro NBA players of all time. That's the end. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, and I'll see you next time.